There is a moment that often follows conviction when the room inside you becomes quieter than expected. You have recognized something, chosen something, perhaps even reorganized part of your life around it, and then a voice you thought had been settled returns with a question. What if you are wrong? What if what felt like clarity was only desire becoming persuasive? The question can feel like an interruption, but sometimes it is the first evidence that your inner life is becoming large enough to examine what it loves. Most people have been taught to misunderstand this moment. They assume that strong conviction should eventually eliminate uncertainty, as though maturity produces a mind in which every important voice reaches the same conclusion. So when doubt appears, they interpret its presence as evidence that something has gone wrong. The insight was false, the decision was premature, the faith was weak, or the person has somehow moved backward. But an integrated person is not someone who has eliminated internal disagreement. An integrated person is someone who can allow disagreement to occur without immediately surrendering authority to whichever voice speaks with the greatest emotional force. The skeptic becomes especially uncomfortable when something matters deeply to you. It is easy to tolerate questions about ideas you do not care about, because nothing precious is threatened by the answer. But ask whether the work you have devoted years to actually matters, whether the relationship you trusted is what you believed it was, whether the transformation you feel is genuine, or whether an experience you consider meaningful might have another explanation. And suddenly, inquiry carries emotional weight. You are no longer examining only claim. You may be examining an identity built around that claim. And this is where skepticism begins revealing what else has quietly joined the conversation. The question, what if this is ego, is difficult precisely because ego is capable of participating in almost anything. It can participate in service, humility, spirituality, creativity, sacrifice, leadership, and even the desire to become less ego driven. This does not make those things false. It means that human motives are rarely pure enough to be divided into clean categories where one action belongs entirely to wisdom and another entirely to self interest. You may genuinely want to contribute something meaningful while also wanting recognition for contributing it, and discovering the second motive does not automatically invalidate the first. This is where an immature skeptic and a mature skeptic begin to separate. The immature skeptic discovers contamination and declares the whole thing corrupted. If there is ego anywhere in the motive must be ego. If there is uncertainty anywhere in the perception must be unreliable. If an explanation contains one weakness, the entire explanation must collapse. Mature skepticism can tolerate mixture. It asks not whether ego is present, but what role ego is playing, how much authority it has been given, what it may be distorting, and whether the larger movement remains worthy after those distortions are seen. The same examination can be brought to the possibility of self-deception. Human beings are capable of seeing patterns that are not there, remembering events imperfectly, interpreting coincidences according to expectation, and becoming more confident in an explanation because it satisfies an emotional need. None of this requires stupidity or dishonesty. The mind is an interpretive system, not a neutral recording device. An interpretation is continuously shaped by history, desire, fear, attention, expectation, and belonging. To acknowledge this is not to distrust consciousness. It is to become more responsible for how consciousness reaches conclusions. So the skeptic asks a useful question. What else could explain this? Notice how different that is from saying this cannot be true. One closes the investigation before it begins, while the other expands the number of possibilities allowed into the room. If you experience something you call intuition, the skeptic may ask whether it could also be preference, anxiety, pattern recognition, prior knowledge, or coincidence. You do not have to immediately choose among those explanations, because sometimes the discipline is simply allowing more than one possibility to remain alive long enough for experience to provide additional information. This can be surprisingly difficult when an explanation has already become beautiful to you. Beauty creates attachment just as fear does, and an idea that organizes many confusing experiences can become emotionally valuable before its accuracy has been fully tested. You begin wanting the explanation to survive because losing it would mean returning to uncertainty. Then questions start feeling less like investigation and more like attack, and you may notice yourself defending the conclusion before you have finished examining the evidence. That defensiveness is not proof that the conclusion is wrong, but it is information about how much of you now depends upon it being right. There are people who become increasingly certain because they have discovered something true, and there are people who become increasingly certain because they have stopped permitting anything to challenge what they believe. From the outside, these conditions can look remarkably similar. Both may speak confidently, both may organize their lives around conviction, and both may appear unaffected by disagreement. The difference is often revealed by what happens when a sincere question enters the room. Understanding that has been examined does not always become louder when challenged. Often it becomes more precise. This is why silencing the skeptic can produce the opposite of the strength you hope to create. The unanswered questions do not necessarily disappear. They simply lose permission to speak openly. They move into the background, where they may emerge as defensiveness, irritation toward disagreement, compulsive reassurance, contempt for outsiders, or the repeated need to confirm that you are still on the correct path. Certainty begins requiring maintenance because it has become responsible for protecting something larger than an idea. What appears to be confidence can then become an elaborate effort to avoid reopening a question that was never actually resolved. Letting the skeptic speak changes the architecture of that relationship. You can say, in effect, "Show me what you see," without promising that everything it says will be obeyed. This distinction matters because giving a voice legitimacy is not the same as giving it command. Fear can speak without determining your direction. Ambition can speak without choosing your values. Grief can speak without defining your future. And skepticism can speak without becoming the final judge of everything you experience. The counsel becomes useful when participation and authority are no longer treated as the same thing. Sometimes the skeptic will bring you something you would rather not know. It may reveal that you exaggerated an experience because the larger version made you feel significant, or that you interpreted someone's behavior according to what you hoped they meant rather than what they consistently demonstrated. It may show you that a decision described as intuition was partly avoidance, that a conviction inherited from your community was never personally examined, or that a story you have repeated about yourself has survived because it protects you from a more difficult explanation. These discoveries can sting precisely because the skeptic was not merely producing anxiety, it was noticing something. And this is where correction must stop being confused with collapse. If one interpretation proves incomplete, you have not necessarily lost the experience that produced it. If one belief changes, everything that grew around it does not automatically become meaningless. You can discover that you misunderstood part of your own journey without declaring the entire journey fraudulent. A person capable of revision possesses something more durable than certainty. They possess a relationship with truth that does not require yesterday's understanding to remain untouched. That relationship changes how you encounter being wrong. Being wrong no longer means that the skeptic defeated you, because the purpose of the counsel was never to protect every conclusion you reached. The purpose was to improve your capacity to see. Sometimes improvement strengthens what you already suspected, sometimes it modifies it, and sometimes it asks you to release an explanation that once served you well. If your identity can survive those movements, inquiry becomes less threatening because truth no longer has to arrive wearing the same shape you expected. There is another question the skeptic asks that reaches somewhere more vulnerable. What if no one cares? This question often appears to be about other people, but beneath it may be a deeper inquiry about the relationship between value and recognition. If you create something and almost nobody sees it, was the creation still worth making? If you follow an unconventional path and nobody validates the direction, can you distinguish between perseverance and the refusal to receive feedback? The skeptic is useful here because neither automatic persistence nor automatic surrender is discernment. You may need to examine what evidence you would accept that a direction should change. This is one of the hardest questions conviction can face, because a belief that interprets every possible outcome as confirmation has become impossible to test. Success proves you were right. Failure proves you are being tested. Agreement proves others recognize the truth. Disagreement proves they are not ready. Visibility proves the work is resonating. Obscurity proves the work is ahead of its time. When every result protects the same conclusion, the skeptic has discovered an important structural weakness. A worldview that cannot imagine what would count against it may be protecting itself more than it is investigating reality. But the skeptic must be examined by the council as well. Doubt can become attached to its own identity, and questioning can become another method of avoiding vulnerability. A person can demand endless evidence because no amount of evidence would ever make action feel completely safe. They can call paralysis discernment, call emotional distance objectivity, and keep every possibility open because choosing one would expose them to consequence. The skeptic that began as quality control can quietly become a gatekeeper that permits nothing uncertain to enter life. So another voice eventually has to turn toward the skeptic and ask the question the skeptic has been asking everyone else. How do you know? How do you know this caution is wisdom rather than fear? How do you know the possibility of being wrong means you should not proceed? How do you know uncertainty is a defect that must be solved before you act? And when the skeptic itself is required to answer rather than merely interrogate, something deeper begins happening at the table, because doubt is no longer standing outside the examination it helped create. The skeptic may discover, when asked to account for itself, that it has been operating from an assumption it never questioned. That uncertainty is dangerous. It may have learned somewhere along the way that the safest position is the one that cannot be embarrassed, disproven, disappointed, or made foolish. From that position, doubt begins to look intelligent simply because it reduces exposure. Yet there is a difference between intelligence that improves perception and intelligence that merely protects the person perceiving. A question can sound rigorous while quietly serving the same defensive function as the certainty it claims to oppose. This is why skepticism cannot be judged only by the questions it asks. You also have to notice what happens after an answer is offered. If every answer immediately produces another objection, if every piece of evidence creates another requirement, and if every possibility is examined except the possibility that something may actually deserve your trust, then inquiry may have become a strategy for remaining unreachable. The skeptic can create an examination no conclusion is permitted to survive. At that point, it is no longer testing reality. It is arranging the conditions so that commitment never becomes necessary. Many people know this pattern without recognizing it as skepticism. They remain in relationships while continuously reserving judgment about whether the relationship is safe enough to fully enter. They pursue meaningful work while keeping enough emotional distance that failure can later be explained as never having truly committed. They explore an idea while repeatedly reminding themselves not to believe too much, care too much, hope too much, or identify too strongly with what they are discovering. The surface language may be caution, but beneath it can be a bargain. I will participate as long as participation never requires me to become vulnerable to what happens next. A mature internal counsel notices this bargain because it does not automatically treat caution as wisdom. It asks what the caution is protecting and whether that protection still serves the person who built it. Perhaps doubt once prevented you from following charismatic people too easily, accepting claims without evidence, or confusing intensity with truth. Perhaps questioning became necessary because certainty had previously cost you something. If so, the skeptic did not appear without reason, and trying to silence it would miss the history that gave it its function. But a function that was once protective can outlive the conditions that required it. The mind is remarkably good at preserving strategies after the original danger has changed. A person who learned to distrust certainty may eventually distrust their own clarity, treating every strong recognition as suspicious because confidence itself has become associated with blindness. They may repeatedly weaken their own conclusions before anyone else has the opportunity to challenge them. What once protected them from being misled can slowly become an inability to let anything become trustworthy. This is one reason discernment requires more than asking whether doubt exists. The better question is what kind of doubt has appeared, what produced it, and what it is asking you to do. Some doubt asks you to look more carefully. Some asks you to gather information you have avoided. Some asks you to slow down because emotion has moved faster than understanding. And some doubt asks you for nothing except another round of doubt because its actual purpose is not discovery but postponement. You can often tell the difference by observing whether the question has a possible answer. Suppose the skeptic asks, "What if I am only seeing what I want to see?" That question can become useful when it leads toward examination. What evidence have I ignored? What evidence would challenge my interpretation? What would I think if someone else described the same situation? And what changes when I remove my preferred outcome from the picture? Now the question has created movement. But if the only response to every examination is still yes, but what if I am fooling myself? The question has ceased functioning as inquiry because no conceivable information can satisfy it. There is humility in accepting that you can deceive yourself, but there is also humility in accepting that you can sometimes perceive something accurately. People often recognize the first form more easily because distrust of oneself can resemble modesty. Yet endlessly refusing to trust your own observation is not necessarily humble. It can place an impossible burden on certainty, requiring you to possess a perspective no human being possesses before allowing yourself to proceed. Mature discernment accepts that you will make some decisions with incomplete knowledge because incomplete knowledge is not an unusual condition of life. It is the ordinary one. This changes the standard by which the council evaluates decisions. The question becomes less often, can I prove that this is correct? And more often, given what I can presently see, what response is most responsible? Those questions sound similar, but they produce very different inner environments. The first can keep you waiting for certainty that reality cannot provide, while the second allows action to remain accountable to new information. You can move without pretending to know everything, and you can revise without pretending the earlier movement was meaningless. Revision is one of the clearest signs that skepticism has found its proper place. When new information arrives, the internal council does not need to stage a trial over who was wrong. It can simply update. Perhaps an intuition contained something real, but was interpreted too broadly. Or perhaps a concern the skeptic raised turned out to matter less than expected. The purpose of examination was never to crown one inner voice as permanently superior. It was to improve the quality of the whole system's relationship with what is actually happening. Consider how different this feels from the inner life many people inhabit. A decision is made, and then every outcome becomes evidence and an argument among competing identities. If things go well, the confident voice says, "I told you so." If they go badly, the skeptic says, "You should have listened to me." Each voice builds a case for future authority from the consequences of the past. Soon the council is no longer interpreting experience together. It is accumulating evidence against itself. That arrangement makes mistakes unusually expensive. A mistake does not remain a mistake about one situation. It becomes proof that a whole part of you cannot be trusted. If you followed intuition and were wrong, perhaps intuition itself becomes suspect. If you listened to caution and missed an opportunity, perhaps caution becomes the enemy. But no useful faculty survives this standard because every human capacity will sometimes misread conditions. Wisdom develops not by discovering the voice that is never wrong, but by learning what each voice sees well, what each tends to miss, and under what conditions its perception becomes distorted. The skeptic sees certain things exceptionally well. It notices unsupported leaps, convenient explanations, contradictions, inflated claims, emotional reasoning, and the subtle movement by which possibility becomes certainty without enough examination in between. It can notice when you have begun using special rules to protect your preferred conclusion from standards you would apply to someone else's conclusion. It can ask whether your language has become more absolute than your evidence warrants. These are not small contributions. Without them, conviction can become increasingly persuasive to itself while becoming increasingly detached from correction. But other voices see things skepticism does not see as easily. Curiosity may notice a possibility before evidence is complete. Imagination may perceive a direction that cannot yet be demonstrated. Experience may recognize a pattern before the conscious mind can explain exactly how it recognized it. Care may know that something deserves attention even when its measurable value is uncertain. The skeptic does not need to invalidate these forms of perception simply because they speak a different language from proof. The counsel becomes more intelligent when different forms of knowing are allowed to remain different. You do not need to convert intuition into certainty in order to respect it. And you do not need to convert skepticism into cynicism in order to respect questions. You can say, I have a strong sense that this matters, while also saying, I do not yet know exactly what it means. You can recognize an experience as meaningful without claiming that your first explanation of it must be final. That small separation between experience and interpretation creates enormous room for honesty. It also changes what happens when someone outside you disagrees. If your inner counsel already contains a legitimate skeptic, another person's questions does not automatically introduce an enemy. They may be pointing toward something you have already considered, something you missed, or something that does not ultimately change your conclusion. You can listen without experiencing listening as surrender because your identity is no longer dependent upon immediate agreement. The person who can examine their own conviction has less need to defend it theatrically. And this is where skepticism begins doing something unexpected to conviction. It can make conviction quieter. Once an understanding has been questioned sincerely, modified where necessary, and allowed to survive without being protected from every challenge, it no longer needs the same performance of certainty. You may find yourself saying, "This is what I currently understand," instead of, "This is unquestionably how things are," and feeling no loss of strength in that difference. The reduction in certainty may actually produce an increase in stability because less of your energy is being spent guarding the borders of the conclusion. Eventually, the skeptic may notice this too. It may discover that its questions are heard before they become accusations, that uncertainty is allowed without being treated as betrayal, and that correction does not cause the whole inner structure to collapse. A voice that once needed to interrupt may begin speaking more precisely because it no longer has to fight for legitimacy. And when the skeptic no longer has to prove its usefulness by doubting everything, another question becomes possible. Not merely what might be wrong with what you believe, but what becomes trustworthy after it has been honestly examined. What becomes trustworthy after examination is rarely the same thing that entered the examination. Even when the central understanding remains, something around it has usually been removed. Exaggeration, defensiveness, borrowed certainty, the need to persuade, or the assumption that every unanswered question threatens the whole. What remains may look less impressive than what you began with, but it is often more usable. You are no longer carrying only a conclusion. You are carrying some knowledge of how that conclusion was formed, where its limits are, and what might require you to reconsider it. This is an important shift because discernment is not merely the ability to choose between true and false. Much of life does not present itself in categories clean enough for that. You encounter partial information, mixed motives, Changing conditions, imperfect memories, competing values, and experiences whose meaning becomes clearer only years later. The demand for immediate certainty can actually reduce discernment by forcing complex realities into conclusions before they have finished revealing themselves. Sometimes the most accurate thing you can say is, I see enough to continue, but not enough to stop listening. The skeptic has a place in that sentence. It does not have to prevent movement in order to remain useful. It can walk beside a decision rather than standing in front of it, continuing to notice what changes as experience provides information that thought alone could never produce. There are questions that cannot be answered from the doorway because the evidence only becomes available after you enter the room. Refusing to move until those questions are settled can therefore become its own form of blindness. You see this whenever a person waits to know who they will become before allowing themselves to change. They want proof that a new direction is authentic before living it long enough to discover whether authenticity grows there. They want certainty that the work matters before doing enough of the work to see what it produces, certainty that trust is justified before participating deeply enough for trustworthiness to become visible, certainty that an inner change is real before permitting the changed person to behave differently. But some knowledge is developmental. You do not think your way into it first and then live accordingly. You live attentively enough for reality to answer questions that reflection could only frame. This does not make action superior to thought. It means thought and experience test different things. Thought can expose contradictions before they become consequences, while experience can reveal assumptions that appeared coherent because they had never encountered resistance. The skeptic may correctly identify 10 ways something could fail and still be unable to tell you what will happen when you actually try. Another voice may correctly recognize possibility and still underestimate the cost of pursuing it. Discernment grows when neither prediction nor hope is mistaken for the event itself. This is why an internal counsel eventually becomes less interested in determining which voice is right and more interested in understanding what each voice is responsible for noticing. The skeptic may be excellent at identifying unsupported claims, but poor at recognizing when caution has become avoidance. Ambition may recognize available capacity, but exaggerate the importance of achievement. The wounded voice may detect genuine danger while also responding to echoes of conditions that no longer exist. Integration does not require these voices to lose their characteristic. It requires their information to be received without allowing any one characteristic to become the definition of reality. Then disagreement inside you begins to feel different. Instead of hearing one voice say go and another say stop, you may hear one describing possibility while another describes risk. Those are not necessarily opposing instructions. They may be two pieces of information about the same decision, and the tension between them does not have to be resolved by defeating one side. You can move toward something because its possibility matters while adjusting how you move because its risks are real. This is a much more demanding form of self-trust than simply believing yourself. Self-trust is often described as confidence in your inner voice. But which inner voice would that be? The one that wants something? The one afraid of it? The one that remembers what happened before? The one imagining what could happen next? Or the one asking whether all of them are interpreting the situation accurately? Deeper self-trust is confidence that you can remain in relationship with yourself while these voices disagree, and that new information will not require you to abandon yourself merely because it requires you to change your mind. That kind of trust can survive embarrassment. You can say, I believe this and I no longer do, without needing to rewrite the past so that you were secretly correct all along. You can acknowledge that desire influenced your interpretation without deciding that desire makes you incapable of perception. You can discover ego in something meaningful without reducing the meaningful thing to ego. The ability to make these distinctions keeps correction proportionate, and proportion is one of the quiet disciplines of discernment. Without proportion, skepticism can become destructive even when it discovers something real. If you find one selfish motive and conclude that the entire action was selfish, you have taken accurate information and expanded it beyond what the information supports. If one prediction fails and you conclude that your judgment cannot be trusted, The skeptic itself has committed the kind of exaggeration it was meant to detect. Doubt is not automatically more accurate because it sounds cautious. It must submit to the same standards of evidence, scale, and context that it asks of conviction. This matters especially when the skeptic turns toward questions of meaning. Meaning is difficult to examine because it does not always behave like a factual claim. Something can matter deeply to you without proving that the universe arranged it for you. And recognizing psychological meaning does not require making a larger claim about the structure of reality. You can honor what an experience changed in you while remaining uncertain about why the experience occurred. That separation allows significance to remain without forcing significance to become proof. There is freedom in learning to say, I do not know what caused this, but I know what it asked me to examine, or I cannot prove that this interpretation is final, but it has helped me live with greater honesty, attention, and responsibility. These statements do not hide uncertainty. They give uncertainty its correct size. They also prevent the skeptic from demanding answers to questions they may not need answers before the experience can become useful. Sometimes discernment is not deciding what something ultimately is, but becoming precise about what you actually know and what you have added to it. This precision can change your relationship with other people's disbelief. If someone doubts what matters to you, you no longer need to force them into your interpretation in order to preserve your own. Their skepticism may expose something useful, or it may simply reflect the limits of what they can know from outside your experience. You can receive the question without surrendering the experience and preserve the experience without insisting that your explanation become theirs. What was once defended as certainty can become something quieter, an understanding held with enough strength to be questioned and enough humility to remain unfinished. The same principle changes how you relate to other people's certainty. Once you have learned to question yourself without destroying yourself, you become less intimidated by people who speak as though they possess no uncertainty. Confidence no longer functions as evidence simply because it is forceful. You begin listening for how a conclusion handles contradiction, whether questions are permitted near it, whether revision is possible, and whether the person can distinguish what they know from what they infer. The skeptic has taught you not merely to doubt claims, but to notice the architecture by which claims protect themselves. And eventually, you begin noticing that architecture in your own language. You hear yourself saying always when you mean often, no when you mean strongly suspect, impossible when you mean difficult to imagine, and everyone when you mean the people whose reactions affected you most. These small corrections may appear insignificant, but they change the relationship between perception and description. Language can quietly increase certainty each time an experience is retold, until the story becomes cleaner and stronger than the evidence that originally produced it. The skeptic can interrupt that inflation before you begin believing the edited version of your own memory. Yet the goal is not to become hesitant in every sentence. There are moments when clarity is appropriate, decisions must be made, boundaries must be established, and a person must act without placing every conclusion permanently on trial. The presence of a skeptic does not mean the council remains in session forever. At some point, enough information exists for a direction to be chosen, and once it is chosen, the skeptic's role changes from preventing commitment to helping commitment remain responsive to reality. This is where doubt becomes discernment most visibly. The question is no longer how can I become certain enough that doubt disappears. It becomes, can I move faithfully with what I presently understand while remaining available to what I have not yet seen? That posture contains conviction without worshiping conviction, and uncertainty without worshiping uncertainty. It allows you to be wrong without becoming fraudulent, right without becoming infallible, confident without becoming unreachable, and cautious without making caution your identity. Perhaps this is why the skeptic needed a seat at the table rather than a locked door outside it. Excluded, it had to shout every objection loudly enough to interrupt the entire council. Enthroned, it would have questioned every movement until life itself became impossible. Seated among the others, it can do something far more valuable. Notice, test, challenge, clarify, and then remain present while a decision is made that no single voice could have made wisely alone. And once the council discovers that disagreement does not threaten its integrity, another possibility begins to appear. the possibility that inner harmony was never meant to sound like everyone saying the same thing.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Vaharat library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.